evening, everybody. That's all for this. Hope you're all doing well tonight. My name is Joe Madaus. I'm the interim campus director here at UCONN Avery Point, and I'd like to welcome you to the campus and to the beautiful Branford house. Maybe some of you aren't familiar with the history of the house and the campus, but this was the summer home of Morton Plant, named after Branford, Connecticut, where he was born. And as I said, this was the summer home, and on nights like this and this past week, you can understand why he chose this piece of land to have his summer estate. This was built to rival some of the mansions in Newport, and some of the notable pieces in here are this two-story fireplace. There was some contraptions in the basement, an automatic drying rack, which was new to the time, an elevator, which was new to the time. This was built in 1903. Another thing I'd encourage you to do if you get a chance is to look at just the woodwork in this room right here. Each of these inlays is different. The marble in the hallways was from Italy, and the wood was from Europe as well. So it's really quite an estate. It went out deep into Groton, and there was a farm. At one point, there were over 50 people that worked here. And then in the 1940s, the land was turned over to the state of Connecticut, and then was turned over to the federal government, and this became the United States Coast Guard training station. And many of you might know people who served here or who were based here for a while. And in the late 1960s, the land was turned back to the state and became the University of Connecticut, Southeastern branch. So it's one of the 5 regional campuses in the UCONN system. A couple of things about the campus as well. If you go out this back door, you'll notice the old Coast Guard R&D station looks like it's falling apart, and it's because it is. It's coming down as part of the UCONN renovations. So that should be down at some point over the winter, and we'll have green space out there. Another interesting piece is the lighthouse that you have out here was part of the quitclaim deed from the state to the federal government, and it said that, that they had to build an aid to navigation. And so that lighthouse was built, and that was the last lighthouse built in the state of Connecticut. So we're really thrilled about the campus, this beautiful place, and a lot of renovations going on, a lot of improvements, including our new student center. So there's a lot going on here at Avery Point. You know, UCONN itself used to be known as a safety school for in-state students, and that's not true anymore. It's now the 19th ranked public university in the country. And so you have a top-ranked university right here in your backyard. And we have more and more students who are selecting Avery Point as their first choice school. We have programs in marine sciences, maritime studies, and English. We also have programs now in engineering, nursing, education. And students can start any major here and then move on to STORS if they choose to do that as well. So we were thrilled when Betty Ann reached out to us as becoming part of the One Book, One Region series. And we're very happy to be a sponsor of this program and to have you here tonight. We also have a number of activities that will be going on in the spring as part of this series. We're very excited about some lectures that are coming together. We have faculty who are working the book into their courses. So it's really going to become part of our campus as well in our community through the spring, which we're very excited about. So once again, welcome. Hope you enjoy your evening, and thank you for letting us be part of this series. So I'll turn it over to Betty Ann now.
So good evening, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Madaus, for arranging for us to use this beautiful space. We're so pleased to have UCONN joining us this year. Welcome to the 14th annual Kickoff event for One Book, One Region. I'm Betty Ann Reiter, the director of the Groton Public Library and a member of the original One Book Committee, with it from when it started. Many of our committee members are here this evening, and I hope you'll join me in thanking them because this is truly a group effort. This year, the group has grown, and we are thrilled to welcome Connecticut College, University of Connecticut Avery Point, and Mitchell College to our community reading project. It has been our goal since the beginning to have everyone, high school age and above, read our chosen book, and so we're delighted to have our local college students join us this year. Many of you who are loyal One Book readers have been wondering what happened to our usual spring announcement on our summer reading schedule. What was taking us so long to make our announcement this year? Those of you who have attended in previous years have heard me describe how we go through this process. The book selection committee meets, and we have piles of books that we bring to our meetings, and we read, and we eliminate, and we come back, and we start again with a new pile trying to find the right book. So you might be guessing that we just couldn't find the right book to rise to the top of the pile this year, but that wasn't the case. We knew from the beginning that Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson was the only book we could recommend to our readers this year. It was coming out in paper in mid-August, and we knew it would be worth the wait. Events of 2015 made us believe that this was the right year to start a community conversation about justice, human rights, and compassion. I have loved all of our 13 previous one-book choices and the way the books have sparked conversations about immigration, the Holocaust, the war in Afghanistan, but I truly believe that Just Mercy is the most important book we have ever brought to your attention. I hope you read it in the coming months. Check our calendar of events often. We're already planning some exciting programs, and join us to share your insights. For the first time, we are asking for your help. Several of our local high schools will be incorporating Just Mercy into their classrooms, and we are inviting you to purchase a copy for yourself and one for a local student. Please check in with Bank Square Books for the details. We also welcome your donations. Your help will allow us to continue to bring quality programs and important speakers to our community. We're going to start this evening's program with a short excerpt from To Kill a Mockingbird, presented by Living Literature. Living Literature is a collective of Rhode Island-based artists and educators who bring literature to life. You'll need to read the book to understand all of the connections between Just Mercy and To Kill a Mockingbird. But John Grisham says, "Not since Atticus Finch has such a fearless and committed lawyer made such a difference in the American South. Though larger than life, Atticus exists only in fiction. Bryan Stevenson, however, is very much alive and doing God's work, fighting for the poor, the oppressed, the voiceless, the vulnerable, the outcast, and those with no hope. Just Mercy is his inspiring and powerful story." So I invite Living Literature to come up, and we'll see how you'll understand some of those connections.
This is our 20th anniversary season. We have created over 100 presentations based on poems and stories, novels, plays, essays, biographies, articles, oral histories in libraries, schools, and other community venues in the tri-state area, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. This will be our 7th year in our collaboration with the Rhode Island program that's similar to yours, Reading Across Rhode Island. Whereas you have one book, one region, Rhode Island is one region, a little state. So we get the whole book covering that, which is in itself a signature program of the Rhode Island Center for the Book and the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities. We also provide free workshops in our process. Living Literature was commissioned by the Groton Library to create a 15-minute reader's theater piece based on To Kill a Mockingbird, to supplement the exploration of the one book, one read, Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. We will be returning in the spring as part of the series of events to supplement this book, but right now, tonight, we're going to be presenting a short excerpt from the book. The connection, as I see it, between the two books can be perhaps explained by saying that the backbone of Bryan Stevenson's story is the story of William Mcmillian, who Stevenson began representing in the late 1980s when he was on death row, Mcmillian, on death row for killing a young white woman in Monroeville, Alabama, the hometown of Harper Lee. We see the themes of prejudice and racial injustice expressed by Harper Lee's narrator played out in the contemporary Southern society described by Mr. Stevenson. So tonight, Sharon Carpentier and Dave Rabinow will join me in sharing a little teaser from Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird.
The events of the summer hung over us like smoke in a closed room. I came to the conclusion that people were just peculiar. I withdrew from them and never thought about them until I was forced to. I was forced to one day in school. Once a week, we had a current events period.
Each child was supposed to clip an item from a newspaper, absorb its contents, and reveal them to the class.
This practice allegedly overcame a variety of evils.
Standing in front of his fellows encouraged good posture and gave the child poise. Delivering a short talk made them word conscious, and learning his current events strengthened his memory.
Being singled out made him more than ever anxious to return to the group.
The rural children who could
Usually brought clippings from what they called the grit paper.
A publication spurious to in the eyes of Miss Gates.
our teacher. Why she frowned when a child recited from the grit paper, I never knew. But in some way, it was associated with liking fiddling,
Eating syrupy biscuits for lunch.
being a holy roller.
Singing Sweetly Sings the Donkey and pronouncing it donkey.
All of which the state paid teachers to discourage.
When his turn came,
Cecil Jacobs went to the front of the room and began. Old Hitler!
Adolf Hitler, Cecil said, Miss Gates. One never begins with old anybody.
Yes, ma'am. Old Adolf Hitler has been prosecuting
Persecuting, Cecil.
No, Miss Gates, it says here... Well, anyway, old Adolf Hitler has been after the Jews, and he's putting them in prisons, and he's taken away all their property, and he won't let any of them out of the country, and he started a program to round up all the half-Jews, too, and he wants to register them in case they might want to cause him any trouble, and I think this is a bad thing, and that's my current event.
Yes, very good, Cecil said, Miss Gates.
Puffing, Cecil returned to his seat.
a hand went up in the back of the room.
How can he do that?
Who do what?
I mean, how can Hitler just put a lot of folks in a pen like that? It seems like the government would stop him.
Hitler is the government, said Miss Gates. And seizing the opportunity to make an education dynamic, she went to the blackboard and printed democracy in large letters. Democracy! Does anybody have a definition?
I raised my hand, remembering an old campaign slogan Atticus had once told me about.
What do you think it means, Jean Louise?
Equal rights for all, special privileges for none.
Very good, Jean Louise, very good. And then in front of democracy, she printed, we are a... Now, class, say it all together.
We are a democracy.
That's the difference between America and Germany. We are a democracy, and Germany is a dictatorship. Dictatorship. Over here, we don't believe in persecuting anybody. Persecution comes from people who are prejudiced. Prejudice. There are no better people in the world than the Jews. And why Hitler doesn't think so is a mystery to me.
Why don't they like the Jews, you reckon, Miss Gates?
I don't know, Henry. They contribute to every society they live in, and most of all, they are deeply religious. Hitler's trying to do away with religion, so maybe he doesn't like them for that reason.
Cecil spoke up.
Well, I don't know for certain. They're supposed to change money or something, but that ain't no cause to persecute them. They're white, ain't they?
When you get to high school, Cecil, you'll learn that the Jews have been persecuted since the beginning of history, even driven out of their own country. It's one of the most terrible stories in history. Time for arithmetic, children.
As I had never liked arithmetic, I spent the period looking out the window. The only time I ever saw Atticus scowl
Was when Elmer Davis would give us the latest on Hitler.
Atticus would snap off the radio and say,
I asked him once why he was impatient with Hitler, and Atticus said,
because he's a maniac.
one maniac and millions of German folks. It looked to me like they'd shut Hitler in a pen instead of letting him shut them up. There was something else wrong. I would ask my father about it. I did.
And he said he could not possibly answer the question because he did not know the answer.
But it's okay to hate Hitler?
It is not. It is not okay to hate anybody.
Atticus, there's something I don't understand. Miss Gates said it was awful. Hitler doing like he does. She got real red in the face about it.
I should think she would.
But...
Yes?
Nothing, sir. After supper...
Atticus sat down on the porch with the paper and called out, "Scout, ready to read."
I went to the front porch.
Something wrong, Scout?
I told Atticus I didn't feel very well and didn't think I'd go to school anymore if it was all right with him.
Atticus fingered his fingers wandered to his watch pocket.
He said that was the only way he could think.
He waited in amiable silence.
And I sought to reinforce my position. You never went to school, and you do all right, so I'll just stay home too. You can teach me like Granddaddy taught you and Uncle Jack.
No, I can't. I have to make a living. Besides, they'd put me in jail if I kept you at home. Dose of magnesia for you tonight and school tomorrow.
Oh, I'm feeling all right, really.
I thought so. Now, what's the matter?
Bit by bit, I told him the day's misfortunes. And she said, you taught me all wrong, so we can't never read anymore, ever. Please don't send me back, sir. Please, sir.
Atticus stood up and walked to the end of the porch. When he completed the examination of the wisteria vine, he strolled back and said, "First of all, if you learn a simple trick, Scout, you can get along a lot better with all kinds of folk. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view.
Sir?
Until you climb into his skin and walk around in it."
Atticus said I had learned many things today.
And Miss Gates had learned several things herself.
I'll be dogged. I didn't know no better than not to read to her, and she held me responsible. Listen, Atticus, I don't have to go to school.
You can't do that, Scout. Sometimes it's better to bend the law a little in special cases. In your case, the law remains rigid, so to school you must go.
But if I keep on going to school, we can't ever read anymore.
That's what's really bothering you, isn't it?
Yes, sir. When Atticus looked down at me, I saw the expression on his face that always made me expect something.
Do you know what a compromise is?
Bending the law?
No, it's an agreement reached by mutual concessions. It works this way. If you'll concede the necessity of going to school, we'll go on reading every night just as we always have. Is it a bargain?
Yes, sir. And when he saw me preparing to spit...
We'll consider it sealed without the usual formality there.
As I opened the front screen door, Atticus said...
Oh, by the way, Scout, you better not say anything at school about our agreement.
Why not?
I'm afraid our activities would be received with considerable disapprobation by the more learned authorities.
Jem and I were accustomed to our father's last will and testament diction, and we were at all times free to interrupt Atticus for a translation when it was beyond our understanding. Huh, sir?
I never went to school, but I have a feeling that if you tell Miss Gates we read every night, she'll get after me, and I wouldn't want her after me.
I went away, not sure that I could explain to Atticus what was on my mind, not sure that I could clarify what was only a feeling.
That's all for now. You have to come back later.
We would not be here this evening if Connecticut College had not stepped up to join the effort to bring Bryan Stevenson and Just Mercy to the residents of southeastern Connecticut. I hope it's just the beginning of a long collaboration. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jefferson Singer, the Connecticut College Falk Foundation Professor of Psychology and Dean of the College. Professor Singer completed his undergraduate work at Amherst College and earned his PhD at Yale. He joined Connecticut College in 1988. His areas of specialization include personality theory, autobiographical memory, clinical psychology, couples and family therapy, narrative identity, and addiction. He's the author of 5 books and over 90 articles, chapters, and book reviews. He's the former director of Connecticut College's Holleran Center for Community Action and Public Policy, which has a focus on the development of active citizenship and leadership. Professor Singer is the recipient of the Fulbright Distinguished Scholar Award. Please welcome Jefferson.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have Connecticut College be part of the One Book, One Region initiative. I'm very grateful to the Groton Library and the other libraries that are involved in this initiative. Betty came to us and really initiated the collaboration by approaching Tracy Reiter, who is our Associate Dean of Community Learning and the Director of the Office for Volunteers for Community Service at Connecticut College. Tracy put together a meeting of other members of Connecticut College, including a professor in the Education Department, Sandy Grande, who will also be a major part from Connecticut College in this partnership. And we're looking forward in the months ahead to really planning with the whole group a number of activities that can happen at the campus, that can happen in the public schools around the area. And the college is really glad to be doing this and excited that we can reach out to the larger community and really learn and contribute at the same time. So I want to say just a few remarks about the book to maybe whet your appetite to be reading it and then to participate in some of the activities that will be taking place in the next months and into the spring. What's great about any good book is that it tells a story. And what's great about Just Mercy is that there are many small stories, but 2 very large stories that are carried through the entire book. It's a nonfiction book, and yet good nonfiction books still are page turners. They still make you want to know what happens next. And so the 2 stories that weave most through the book are the story of Bryan Stevenson, the lawyer. And I want to spend a little time on that story, but then also the story of Walter Mcmillian, who is a convicted person on death row that Bryan Stevenson works to exonerate. Bryan Stevenson's story is in some ways the central story in that I would call it a coming-of-age story in a certain respect. It's a story of how a young man really finds his calling in life and finds his purpose and deepens, I think, the trajectory of his life to be more than just about being an attorney, about being someone that is doing a vocation, but really someone who discovers a mission. And what we see as we move through the book with Bryan Stevenson is that he begins as a young lawyer just out of Harvard, but you shouldn't, by knowing that he's a Harvard-trained lawyer, think that this is a person that comes from privilege. By no means. He grew up in a small town in Delaware, very modest circumstances. As an African-American, he had faced, throughout growing up, prejudice at many different stages in his life. And he comes to the work of supporting and advocating for people on death row almost through coincidence, in that it was an internship. He really didn't know what he was getting into. He does the internship and discovers that this is an area of law that he could become involved in. And then what you see over the chapters of the book is this young man who is learning the ropes, who is slowly getting a purchase on the ability to defend these very difficult cases, gains confidence and gains strength and gains an ability to become a tireless and fearless advocate. And one of the things that's stunning about the book is that in most stories there are a variety of relationships that exist that guide the story. And Bryan Stevenson, you almost learn nothing about his personal life, about his friendships or his family. The relationships that you see are the relationships that he forms with the people that he's advocating for. And those relationships come alive in the book. They're meaningful and humorous and moving at various points. But the almost monastic purpose of Bryan Stevenson through the book, his single-minded purpose to help these other men and women and children that he's working to support, is remarkable. So there's a kind of self-discipline and a selflessness that you see throughout the story of Bryan Stevenson that comes across, and it's quite moving. And I've often found that by the end of the book, I was wondering, what else is going on in your life? Did you ever even take time to eat, to sleep, to do anything for yourself? Because you feel this unrelenting power towards working for other people. So that's one story. The other story that really dominates, and we saw a little allusion to it, is the story of Walter Mcmillian, who comes from Monroeville in Monroe County in Alabama, and really was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and ends up being sentenced to death, and faces this with a kind of stoicism and courage that I'm not sure many of us could have marshaled. And the friendship that develops and the respect that develops between these two men is the way that those two stories are linked throughout the book. And I think you'll find that as you go through the book and you read each chapter, you want to return back to finding out what happens next to Walter, and then Bryan Stevenson takes you on a side journey to teach you a little bit more about national policy, to teach you a little bit more about some of the other people that are on death row. And then you're saying, well, get back to Walter. I want to know what's going to happen next to him. And then you come back into the story again and find it moving you forward in a fascinating way. Having told you just a little bit about the narrative arc of the book, I do want to say something a little bit about the themes of the book. There's a quotation that starts the book from the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, and it says, "Love is the motive, but justice is the instrument." So I want to talk for a moment about what that means. Love is the motive and justice is the instrument. And I think the best way we can unpack a little bit what that statement means is to think about the name of the book itself, Just Mercy, right? So justice and mercy, how do these two concepts entwine with each other to form the way that we live in a society together? We rely on justice because we believe that we will be treated fairly by the law. We believe that laws will be applied equally to all of us. And we trust in the fact that we can have a just society if those laws are applied in that way with equal measure for all people. But we also believe that justice requires some level of compassion, that if we apply laws equally, we must also look at circumstances and understand that circumstances may cause people to behave differently in certain situations, and we have to take that into account when we apply the law, and we expect that mercy will accompany the rigid application of law. So we have to have a society that has both of these in working in tandem. But what I think the quotation means, and what I think the title of the book means, Just Mercy, is that ultimately we have to rely that justice will be applied in situations where unfairness and inequality are taking place, and that justice will guide us to compassion, will guide us to mercy if we advocate for fairness. And Bryan Stevenson is a fair-minded person. He's not a weak person. He's not a vacillating person. He believes, probably more than any person that I've ever encountered, in the fairness of society, and that fairness should be applied. And he believes that if we adhere to the principle of fairness, we will find compassion and we will find mercy. But we can't find it if we don't apply justice with that kind of commitment and determination. So I want to read a passage that I think sums up a little bit from the book, some of his his attitude about this. He says, I've represented abused and neglected children who were prosecuted as adults and suffered more abuse and mistreatment after being placed in adult facilities. I've represented women whose numbers in prison have increased 640% in the last 30 years and seen how our hysteria about drug addiction and our hostility to the poor have made us quick to criminalize and prosecute poor women when a pregnancy goes wrong. I've represented mentally disabled people whose illnesses have often landed them in prison for decades. I've gotten close to victims of violent crime and their families and witnessed how even many of the custodians of mass imprisonment, prison staff, have been made less healthy, more violent and angry, and less just and merciful. I've also represented people who have committed terrible crimes, but nonetheless struggle to recover and to find redemption. I've discovered deep in the hearts of many condemned and incarcerated people the scattered traces of hope and humanity, seeds of restoration that come to astonishing life when nurtured by very simple interventions. Proximity has taught me some basic and humbling truths, including this vital lesson. Each of us is more than the worst thing we have ever done. My work with the poor and the incarcerated has persuaded me that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. I've finally come to believe that the true measure of our commitment to justice, the character of our society, our commitment to the rule of law, fairness, and equality cannot be measured by how we treat the rich, the powerful, the privileged, and the respected among us. The true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned. So the true measure of our justice is the degree of mercy that we can find. The true measure of our justice is the degree of compassion that we can find for all citizens within the society. So this book is more than just a good story. It's more than just a statement about social policy, more than a statement about social justice. It's really a statement, in the end, about how we can find a combination of living our life around fairness and compassion, and how those two are really synergistic qualities that inform the way that we need to be with each other as a society. So I could not be more thrilled about this book to be something that we as a community, as a county, as various schools and colleges and universities can share with each other. And perhaps the outcome of sharing it will make us a little bit more just and compassionate with each other. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jefferson, and thank you again to Connecticut College and to UConn Avery Point for allowing us to use this beautiful Branford house. Please enjoy the book, the library programs, and book discussions over the winter months, and we will see you on April 4th at Connecticut College, where we invite you to bring your friends and your neighbors to meet Bryan Stevenson. See you then.